Hey guys, it's quote unquote your boy Ballface 8020 back with another great movie recommendation. So this movie, The Boys Next Door, like any movie you can, like any pretty much any movie you want to talk about that's from the past and worth watching, or even not worth watching. You have to start off with the disclaimer: this movie could never be made today. And although there isn't anything like specifically wrong with it, I would actually. It's just as much as it's just too white. Everybody like pretty like there are non-whites in it, but it's just overwhelmingly. It's very white, much whiter than the contemporary country is, and that's actually part of the movie, is that it's. I mean, the movie is I think was shot in '84. It was released in '85, but it's very just like what America used to be. I think one of the reasons it couldn't be made today is it just isn't relevant anymore. And it takes place in Los Angeles. In fact, it doesn't just take place in Los Angeles. It takes place the two main characters. I don't know if you can call them protagonists, are on a trip to Los Angeles. They're in Los Angeles on a trip from Nowheresville, USA. And when I was growing up, that was just kind of like the standard American fantasy, was picking up and going to California. I remember when I was in high school, hearing or I think it was sophomore year or junior year. I think sophomore year. I don't remember when. It was sophomore year. Just a friend telling me that when at graduation, he and some other friends were going to go on a road trip like this right after graduation that summer to California, and and my own dream. My dream as a kid was to become a professional boxer. I wanted to be world middleweight champion, and I was always said, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to take what savings I have and buy a car or maybe a motorcycle. It depended, and I'm going to Los Angeles. Um, and I'm going to join a boxing gym there and start my career. And I would imagine that that's not a dream American kids have anymore, because it is just a different country. I mean, it's just like even as late as the mid '90s. Yeah, everybody knew Los Angeles was hell. It was kind of notorious for being hell on earth, but there was still some like allure about it. Like there was something like Los Angeles, California, like that's kind of like the edge of the frontier, America. The paradise weather, the glamour of Hollywood and stuff. And now you think of California and California in general, and Los Angeles in particular, as just a third world hellhole. Which is obviously what it is. And now, certainly today, we have a more realistic view of California. I mean, California was, I mean, except for maybe in the '60s, has '70s, '80s, '90s, when there still was that dream and mysticism of California. California was already a shithole even then. It wasn't as bad as it is now, but still. But it was very like that was just something all Americans had. Like it was just like California. That was even before like California. As hard as this is to believe, it was that was before California was a one-party blue state. In fact, as late as 1994, I think it was '94, maybe '95. So basically, 10 years after this movie, Pete Wilson won governor's election in California on uh, on a policy platform of being against illegal immigration and saying that like when I'm a governor, I'm going to deny illegal immigrants treatment for illnesses, so they won't be so they won't as many won't keep coming to California. It was just a different country, a different state. Everything was just different. Um, so in that sense, I think like for younger people who don't remember the whole California era, the whole like what California used to be, not so much against what it used to be, but what it used to mean to people. The movie might not make quite as much of an impact on them because they might like kind of miss the whole California angle. But even still, a black pillar of any country in any generation can enjoy it. And it's interesting that this movie was actually made before the Black Pill. I guess because it doesn't obviously deal with inceldom or anything, but it does deal with the kind of hopelessness in nihilism that black pillars would be able to relate to. So anyway, the in terms of famous actors in it, there's the main. I don't know if you can really call him the main guy or the second main guy or the co-guy. Is Charlie Sheen? He plays Bo. He's phenomenal in it. He was really handsome as a kid too, and kind of like, I mean, not like Chad type, but he was, handsome in a, I don't know, 1980s way. Um, there's I forget the guy who plays Roy, who's the other main character, who's really good. He's not like, he was never an A-lister, but he had some stuff on like TV or something. I think he's actually British. And then I don't know if you guys remember. Do you? But like, did you guys, any of you guys ever see Happy Gilmore and remember Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore? He's in it too. This was, I think, maybe probably his first like big role. Although his part actually isn't that big. So anyway, the movie follows the misadventure. I'm going to try not to give too much away. The misadventures of these two graduating seniors from high school in sort of Nowheresville, Southwest America. Roy and Bo. Again, Bo is Charlie Sheen. Roy is the other guy. These guys in their, podunk town are, I don't know if you can call them outcasts per se. They're misfits. They're friends with each other. They're not bullied or anything, but they're clearly considered weirdos and gross by everybody else. So it's like the last day of high school, and you see that. So they're graduating, and you can see like people are talking about what they're going on to, like they're going on to college to study this, whatever. And Roy and Bo are not going to college. They've got nothing ahead of them. So you see, Roy sees a Marine recruiter's table, and he goes up to it, and he's looking at the stuff, and the Marine recruiter is like, "Oh yeah, you're interested in the Marines?" Like, and he starts talking about these things like you can learn these skills and get money for college. And then Roy just says, "I don't care about any of that stuff." And then he goes, "Well, then what exactly are you interested in, young man?" And he says, "I want to know how you can kill people." And then he's like, and the Marine guy, just without batting an eyelash, is like, "Well, it sounds like you are more interested in being a grunt." And he, it gives him some information there. So they graduate. The last day of high school ends. They graduate, and you see Bo. You can see like their interactions. Like Roy just basically is like a complete like social recluse. He doesn't talk to anybody except Bo. But Bo actually tries to socialize with other people, especially with some girls that, or particularly this one girl that he's got a thing for. She's supposed to be a Stacy type. She's a Stacy by like the standards of 1980s American movies. There were different beauty standards back then. She actually doesn't do much for me, but she is very much like the 80s blonde California fantasy girl type, who's obviously not going to be going. She's going to be going for some preppy jock, not some guy like Bo. So anyway, that day ends, but there was a party that night. Some nerd in their high school was having a graduating party, and Bo and Roy are not invited. They go to it, and same type of thing. Bo tries to socialize, and Roy just kind of sits there like a bump on the log, and eventually, Roy goes and yells at the Stacy type for forgetting Bo's name, and so they leave the party, but when they leave, they steal the dog of the the kid whose party it was at, and so um, so anyway, and I might be messing up the order a little this, but Bo, you see, like he kind of has a normal, like just kind of normal standard working class American upbringing, and you never see his parents But you do see that, now that he's graduated high school, he goes home into his house, and he's got because Roy's dropped him off. Roy's waiting outside. His grandparents left him $200. Gave him $200 as a congratulations present for graduating high school. And the so he takes that, and he tells Roy, hey, why don't summer's starting, but remember, it's senior year, so there is no summer anymore. They're about to go get jobs. Why don't we, take a weekend and go to Los Angeles? We've never got a chance to do it, but we're 18. We've got my car. We've got this $200. Let's go to Los Angeles for the weekend. Again, if you were an American in that, that's a very common, a young American dream back in the time this movie was made. Today, it just wouldn't happen because who would want to go to Los Angeles? And and so then Roy goes back to his house to pack some stuff up for the weekend, and he sees his dad, who just doesn't acknowledge or talk to him the entire time. Roy just packs his clothes into a shopping bag, like one of those brown shopping bags. Roy tells him he's going, but then again, his dad just completely ignores him, and it's in a trailer. He lives in a trailer, and it's giving you more indication that Roy really has nothing. I mean, he's friends with Bo, but other than that, he can't relate to anybody. He has no future whatsoever. He has no family, and he's living in a trailer. I mean, the guy's got nothing in his life and nothing to look forward to. So they start their trip to Los Angeles, and they stop. They stop at this factory, and and they get out of the car to go look at it, and they're looking at it and just thinking about their futures, because on Monday morning, that's what's going to happen for both of them. They're going to walk into that factory, and then, if they're lucky, get to work at it for the next 40 years, stamping holes in sheet metal. That's their future. They've got nothing. They've got nothing going to them. Now, Bo is okay with that. He's okay with just the idea of the typical boring American life. But Roy, you can tell, is really not. He's just there's, and this goes back to what I talked about in that I don't know, it was one of my previous videos. I can't remember what it was. I think I was wearing the red shirt in it though. Where I talked about their how I feel like in American culture, I don't know what it's like in other countries. Certainly when I was growing up, probably still just as bad today. You're just told as a kid, either implicitly or explicitly, that you're going on to great things. At least if you're a middle class American kid. I don't know what it's like elsewhere. And how so these guys through that better times are ahead, and these are two guys they're graduating high school. And better time, they've got out of high school, but nothing better is ahead of them. If anything, what's ahead of them is worse. It's just that this is it. This is their life. This is their future, is working at these shitty blue collar job at a factory until they retire or die. That's it. And there's no glamour, no excitement, just nothing. And they're just nothing for them. And that kind of sets the tone, or sets the background for everything else that happens in the movie, for all the actions that they do, for what motivates them. And I was reading a review of it. That's really, what happens with this movie is you don't sympathize with the stuff they do. You don't sympathize even necessarily with them. You might to a little bit, especially with Bo. I mean, for me, I actually kind of ended up sympathizing with both of them, but not. I mean, I don't know. You grow attached to characters you watch in the movies, but you definitely you don't sympathize. You don't sympathize with their actions. Their actions are terrible, and they but you understand, like, even though you don't agree with it, you understand, like, the hopelessness that these actions came out of, and that's not to be any kind of justification at all. It's not, but you see where it's coming from. Like, like, what seems completely senseless is, it's still evil, but it's not really senseless. Like, like, there's it's a reaction, a wrong reaction, an evil reaction to hopelessness, to nothingness, to stuff like that. And there is one other thing I want, and so I guess so a couple more things. My first exposure to this movie was as a small child. I think I was 9 or 10. My cheap ass parents didn't buy cable, so wouldn't buy us cable, and it wasn't because they didn't want us to be exposed to cable. It really was just because they were cheap. I asked them both later about this, like, why don't we have cable as a kid? And I had always thought it was something like, we don't want you watching too much TV. No, it was just because they were too fucking cheap to buy cable. That was literally the only reason. And it didn't make any sense because my parents weren't, like, cheap normally. I mean, my dad could be a pain in the ass about money. My mom too, but my dad was worse about it. But they weren't cheap. They really weren't cheap at all. They weren't like big spenders, but it was just, I mean, it's just such a weird thing to be stingy about. Eventually, my father got cancer, so he was in bed a lot, and that's when we finally got cable. So we didn't get cable until I was 16. So I grew up as a kid, and everybody else besides me had cable. I seriously didn't know a single other person in my school who didn't have it, except for this one kid who actually didn't even have a TV. Um, but what were we talking about? Um, so anyway, because I didn't have cable, like, there would be, and I might make a video about this later. There would be times like a Saturday night as a kid I wasn't even in high school yet. I was in grade school. Um, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. There isn't really anything to do if you're not staying over at a friend's house, or a friend isn't staying over with you. Because remember, there was no internet back then. And as for, you could say you could play video games, but again, no internet means it's not online. You can't play Super Mario Brothers for 8 hours. Okay, it's just, those are great games, the old Nintendo games, but you can't play them. You can't just sit there and play them for 8 hours like you can, like these modern games that the kids are playing today. So what would you do? You'd flip channels on TV. Well, with me, I literally had 5 channels. So there's this, so I'm flipping through the channels, and I see, with the gas station scene. So I see this movie, that this Boys Next Door. I didn't know what it was called then. I didn't know who Charlie Sheen was then. Um, the gas station scene in it, and it scared the shit out of me. Again, I was only like 10 years old, and then so I clicked. I watched the gas station scene, but then I eventually went to a commercial, and I was like, this isn't for me. Although I did flip back to it a little bit later, and it was like even and there was a scene that was even scarier. I was like, okay, you know what? Let's just stop it. I mean, I don't find it scary at all today, but as a kid, I was really easy to scare, and I think a lot of kids would have found it scary. Um, so okay, that's the first part of it. That was my first inclination. But anyway, and then so what got me thinking about the movie is I just thought it was some obscure weirdo movie, which I saw plenty of as a kid because my cheap ass parents wouldn't buy cable, so I would end up seeing these things on late night Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night TV, and at least clips of them. And but then one day on YouTube, the gas station scene is in my feed. So I mean, I clicked on it and not realizing what it was, and then I was like, "Holy shit! I remember this scene from when I was a kid," and which inspired me to actually like look into to the movie. By the way, if you want to see the movie, I found the whole thing on BitChute. It's probably still there. You can just look the boys next door, BitChute. Um, and so anyway, so yeah, what's the gas station scene? Seeing that movie, I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about it. I don't know. I'll probably remember after the thing's done. But yeah, I think that really, I really would think that any black pillar should watch it. I'm not sure that you'd necessarily like it, and I didn't love it. It's not great, but it is kind of original. And I enjoyed it for what it was. Like for a 1980s, a 1980s movie. I mean, you got to think of like most movies aren't particularly deep. This one is no exception, but it's unique. It's unique. It's interesting, and I think it holds up really well today. In a lot of ways, even for all the darkness in it, it is kind of a window into a better time. I mean, if we're being honest, like, yeah, some things are better now. Um, but in a lot of ways, 1980s America, it was a better time. There was certainly, it's ironic because the movie is so hopeless, but things were less hopeless overall. There was like a lot of things that we took for granted then, like the homogeneity of the country, the relative non-political polarization of politics. It was America was America, and the I don't know, just the way things were. And when you look back on it, it was never sustainable anyway. You can blame the left as much as you want. Say, oh, the left, stole the America I grew up in. The America I grew up in was never going to last, um, with or without the left. The left didn't kill America; they put it out of its misery. But anyway, I'm way off topic here. But and yeah, and in a lot of ways, things are better now. So you have to look at the whole picture. So yeah, I really strongly recommend if you are a black pillar that you check it out. If you're not a black pillar, I'm not really sure that you're even allowed to watch my videos. That's all for now, and I'll see you in the next.